the podcast with more comebacks over the last couple of seasons than Roman Reigns in the last several years on WWE television, has returned once again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It's been a while, friends, to another edition of your favorite NFL talking Agents of Chaos, the sports Agents of Chaos. Here, of course, as the title entails, as you can see, it can really be a skeleton crew if there were only ever three of us to begin with. It is two of your three favorite of the trifecta, or the troublesome triumvirate, as we've called ourselves. It is the Iceman leading the proceedings, and of course, alongside me is our games master, Justin. Justin, how are we doing? It's been a little bit, brother. How have you been?
It's been a little bit, man. I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing fantastic. You know, nothing really wakes up the body more than waking up at like 6:30 a.m. in the morning for a number of days. You are more than well aware of that as well. So we're just two blue collar guys. You know, just doing well. We don't work blue collar jobs, but the people understand what I mean there. I mean, we in the camera, both our shirts look like a kind of similar shade of blue. We just have a different logo, but like we damn near wore the same thing.
Blue and orange.
Yeah, exactly. Look at that. So, ladies and gentlemen, as per tradition on the show, one with the Podfather not being here, even though it's not really the first episode of the season, but let's all play pretend for his sake. It is conference / division preview time, and like we did last year, which was very critically acclaimed by the fans, some would say, we are going to truncate like we did last year, all four divisions to talk about in this episode. We begin with the AFC in this episode because it is home to the team that lost in the Super Bowl last year, and we'll go back next week to the winning conference, the NFC, home to the defending Super Bowl champions. But we're hitting up the AFC this week. And Justin, what a hell of an offseason it was. A good amount for us to catch up on. But funny enough, honestly, even with it being a little bit, a lot of the major stuff did happen around the last time we were doing things. Free agency stuff, we did the 2 weeks in a row where we recapped and ranked teams in free agency. And then we did our 2 weeks of the mock draft where we still discussed a good amount of stuff. So I don't think we missed too much. There have been extensions. Of course, I'm sure some of that will come up in conversation during this episode and the next one when we talk about the NFC. But for the most part, I think we did a pretty good job at least for ourselves, being in tune with what happened across the NFL landscape as we prepare for this next season. So my man, are you ready?
Yep. Thanks for everything. It was great. We did a great job. I'll see you guys next week.
Let's speed run this bad boy, ladies and gentlemen. The 2026 NFL preview here on Sports Agents of Chaos. And we begin with the AFC, and we begin with the AFC North. Of course, as in tradition years past, we do it by where their last team was standing in the postseason. And yeah, this was the team that saw nobody go through to the divisional round of the playoffs, the AFC North. So this division, won by the Steelers last year, Justin. Aaron Rodgers missed a little bit of time, had his moments, right? He's coming back. He's officially said it. This is his final year of his career. No other season, no more training camps, nothing else. This is a last ride. And the Steelers really decided to make it a reunion because after Mike Tomlin stepped down, stepped away, probably fired, but they're not going to admit it like that. Mike McCarthy was chosen to be the successor to Mike Tomlin, is reuniting with Aaron Rodgers. So a team that won this division last year through grit and defense is now changing the identity, Justin. Now that we're closer, we've seen way more happen. Moves, of course, the draft. What do you make of the Steelers and their chances in an AFC North that there's some, injuries dealt with a lot of that division last year, bar one team, but it's a pretty good division when you consider some of the other competition in there.
Yeah, the question is going to be is if they can keep the defense as strong as it was without Mike Tomlin. They had a very good defense. It's really what kept them in games. Aaron Rodgers was, up and down, but they traded for Pittman. They still have Dowdle, and they signed Dowdle, and they still have some really good offensive playmakers there. The question is, can they put the offense together? And now they got an offensive-minded head coach in Mike McCarthy. They put together a Super Bowl winning duo once again. Let's see if they still got some magic in that old silk hat, as they would say.
Indeed. And you bring up a good point that the issue for this team for the last couple of years now has just been if they can find a consistency in the offense. The book on the Steelers for years now has been the consistency is the inconsistency of that offense. There were some weeks where they would honestly look like a top 10 offense, and then other weeks where you question if they even studied a game plan going into it. And that's been the case for a couple of years. And then, of course, there's the thing of playing up to competition and playing down to competition. They're going to hope that they can even that out as they're going to be, facing a division that if we're to assume if things go well, if you're going to assume things go well for the Steelers, you need to give the same credence to their opponents in their division. And there's a couple teams in that division that really want things to go well this way. But no, I'm with you. I think with Mike McCarthy being there, as much grief as plenty of people will give him, even I think ourselves included a bit on this podcast. Like if there's one thing you can't deny, it's his offensive prowess, it's his offensive mind. The dude's a genius. And if there is any head coach that you could make the argument that you probably wanted in the last season of Aaron Rodgers at this older age, McCarthy probably would be closer to the top of that list, I think, than most people want to give credit for. So it'll be interesting to see offensively and then defensively as well. You mentioned like they've been rock steady and sturdy for years. If they just, I think the big thing on that defense is just like timeliness of stuff, right? Like over the last couple seasons, various guys have missed time here and there. And if they could keep and get everyone healthy, this is a respectable secondary with Joey Porter Jr. and Asante Samuel Jr. We promise it's not just all juniors on that defense. You have a veteran in that defensive backfield in Ramsey. And, of course, TJ Watt, if he could stay healthy, perennial double-digit sacks, Highsmith and other guys. The Steelers are going to be a relative force to be reckoned with in their own division. But so are two teams that so far, Justin, I think a lot of early indications are at least one of the next two teams is going to be healthy this season. And to a lot of people, one of the next two is going to put themselves back in contention to take that AFC North crown back. And that is the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Both teams, of course, there's a little bit more nuance to it, but the easiest way to describe last season for both squads was when you lose your starting quarterback in a relatively early part of the season, it just completely derails you from that point forward. So, of course, the two teams saw changes, but ultimately, Justin, how important is it going to be for both these teams that Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, two perennial MVP candidates, are going to be healthy in 2026?
I mean, it's everything, right? You see what happens when these guys aren't on the field. It's literally everything. To have that kind of quarterback go down. I mean, even if you have a playoff caliber team without them and a bad quarterback, like it's just such a demoralizing hit to your team that it's so much harder to overcome whether or not you're good or bad. Like if you were going to be missing them, you're almost better off not having them for the whole season to begin with, as opposed to losing them for, games, if not large chunks of the season. I think the most important thing for the Bengals is, can they finally get out of their own way in the beginning of the season? I mean, These slow starts continuously have killed them year after year after year. They finally need to string together a couple of good winning, first halves of the season so that they're not playing catch up anymore. Every year, it's always, oh man, they better hope the Bengals, don't make it in the playoffs because they're the hottest team in the NFL. And they miss it by a game, a half a game or whatever, because they lost the first 3 games to opponents that really it probably shouldn't lose to.
Yeah.
So that's what's really the most important thing to me. Joe Burrow's health obviously is a major stepping stone also. He seems to be missing large chunks of the year every year now. We expect a lot more from his career. I obviously believe that maybe they need to fix some of that offensive line. They try every year. Hopefully they accomplished it this year. But we'll see. The Ravens question now is, I mean, obviously we've seen Lamar healthy. We've seen Lamar unhealthy. For the most part, I think that we see him doing well. Can he take less hits? And can he make the next step? Because making the playoffs doesn't really seem like a reasonable option anymore. They got to start winning some games down there.
Yep, absolutely. So even past the Lamar Jackson question, let me ask you this. There were some questions about performance for this guy early last season for Baltimore, but I think he definitely more than turned it around in the back half of the year especially. What do you think of Derrick Henry and just early thoughts on what this season could be for him? Are you expecting that back half to be the thing, or like what are your thoughts on him? Because behind Lamar, he might be the next most important player on the team.
He definitely is. And the question was, performance, I think you can say, because he had those fumbles, which is super uncharacteristic for Derrick Henry. But if you really look at it, his performance outside of the fumbles wasn't an issue. It was, why aren't they giving him the ball? I mean, if you look at that first game, he had 50 yards and a touchdown in the first half, and they gave him the ball 3 times playing with the lead in Kansas City. Ended up losing that game because all of a sudden they put themselves in a spot where they were no longer able to reasonably run the ball. So I think that his performance is absolutely key. I think that he doesn't necessarily get off to as slow a start. His fumbling thing was very quickly taken care of. And, teams are trying to target that right from the get-go again this year. I assume that they're not going to let that happen. The question now is, the King's another year older.
Yep.
He's another year of taking those hits. How much does he have left in the tank? Is this another MVP-esque caliber season? Or is this, the drop-off that everyone's been preying on. You know what they say, long live the king.
Indeed. But what will be key, and maybe it'll play a fact, is that it is ultimately a new guy taking the charge when it comes to on the field duties on game day, right? You have Jesse Minter. He's first-time head coach now. He's the new guy there. There's going to be. It's interesting that last season they missed the playoffs. We know it's because of injuries, but now this first-time head coach is taking the reins here. Like, there's not going to be low expectations for him coming into the season, Justin. The expectation is that this guy is going to be able to get them back in their winning ways. And the impact that they're expecting, of course, the offense is going to do what the offense does. And maybe with another new offensive mind in there, they'll be able to, maybe scheme things up differently. Maybe the receivers can finally, maybe one extra guy can break out, because they need that second guy to break out alongside Zay Flowers this year. I think that, to me personally, that might be the real X factor. Mm-hmm. If Lamar and Derrick Henry are healthy, let's give them a clean bill of health. If you have that second wide receiver finally break out for you in the passing game, I think that will be the big key. But what Jesse Minter is expected to do is really help that defense out in Cincinnati. And that is going to be, most rookie head coaches don't come in with that kind of expectations, Justin? But the expectation is, hey, we need double-digit wins again, and we need to get back to the playoffs.
Absolutely. I mean, look, it's not like he doesn't come from a winning pedigree too. He was in Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
He was in LA for a couple of years, actually, I believe.
Okay. Well, no, the most recent LA guys were oh my God, he was the Jets coordinator. He's the brother of the Packers guy, LaFleur. So, but Minter was in LA with him?
He was the defensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh.
So he's a defensive guy. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting spot. The question is also for me, like, I know they've had new offensive coordinators, but the edict has always been, we're running our offense through Lamar on Lamar's terms. And I feel like that was something that came down from Harbaugh. It's going to be interesting to see if they try and change any of that, partially because it's hard to take hits, but then it's also, is he a player that can thrive in that kind of environment? When he was drafted, they said that if you're going to draft a player like this, you need to play his style of ball, and we weren't sure it translates to the NFL. Well, we're here now, and we're making some major changes for the first time in his career. It's going to be interesting to see how he responds.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be a hell of a thing for a first-time head coach to reckon with all that, as this team has the expectations. The only team in this division that didn't change their head coach, ironically, the Cincinnati Bengals. I promise you, if we get to the head coach hot seat-o-meter in midseason this year, Rick is going to be yelling for him to be on that hot seat, even if they're like 6-2. At that point, he's going to be yelling for it, because he's definitely one of those guys that Rick is.
He's been yelling it for a long time, as has a lot of us.
It's so true. But the Cincinnati Bengals, Justin, I mean, I know, of course, we talked about Joe Burrow, and his health is going to be first and foremost. And it did kind of look like it looked like they were starting to get over some of the early season issues last season when Burrow was healthy. He was healthy for the first game and a half. And they were about to be a confident 2-0 after the first game and a half, but then you lose your quarterback. Once again, let's assume, like for Baltimore, let's give the Bengals some credit. Let's say Joe Burrow is able to stay healthy. We know the number one thing is going to be that defense overall. You look at some of the additions they made, Justin. They added Boye Mafe in free agency. Dexter Lawrence was the big trade, of course, Jonathan Allen. They really did a lot on this defense, especially more in the front seven aspect of it, right? Like they believe in the development of their secondary. The linebacking core, a little bit of adjusting, but a lot of it was in the front seven and the front four in particular. Do you think the Bengals have finally done enough on paper, invested enough that their defense, I'm not going to say they're going to make a massive leap, but respectable, like more maybe like in that 12 to 15 range in the league? Do you think that they've done enough finally?
Defensively? I don't know. I mean, it's obviously, I think it's really going to depend heavily on that secondary. Mm-hmm. I've never really loved their scheme in the backfield, but that might have just been because of the players that they've had there. Right. So it's gonna, we're gonna have to see. Their secondary has really been the Achilles heel of that team, in my opinion. They've had a couple of good guys. They've had star safeties. They've had star corners, but they've never had a truly complete defense, and that's where teams pick them apart. Yeah, I mean, that's for since they made the Super Bowl, that's all anyone's ever said. Fix the offensive line, fix the secondary. Yeah. They've tried to address it this year, but I am a wait and see. I don't want to speculate on that until I see that. That's the kind of team that I think you say, all right, prove it to me before I give you your flowers.
No,
No matter what they do.
100%, I'm with you, because they do, like, for the development that you hope happens with them, and also so with some of the guys on the offensive line, they do have to prove it. And maybe adding some of those veterans, like we mentioned, and Mafe and Lawrence, especially on the defensive side, can help out. And also, even in the secondary, to be fair, they did add Brian Cook from Kansas City, because as is tradition, or as was this offseason, no player in the secondary basically stayed for Kansas City. All of them basically left in some way, shape, or form. They have a completely new secondary over in Kansas City. We'll get to them in a little bit. But no, I mean, the story with the Bengals, relatively consistent. Can the offensive line protect Burrow? Is this defense going to be able to take that next step? It's going to be very interesting to see. And if all Shekshi Dekshi can make that big of an impact, and if he can get himself in that defensive line rolling, it would be very interesting to see Cincinnati proper back in the playoff hunt, in the in the playoff conversation, because it's been a couple of years since we've seen that. And when you have a quarterback that talented, that should not be the case. All right, Justin, the Cleveland Browns exist. That's kind of about it. They changed their head coach. Does it count of changing quarterback? Because Shador played last year, but he didn't start last year. What do we consider that situation there? They traded Myles Garrett, so there's that. Poor Jared Verse.
Jared Verse trade is a very interesting trade.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's a great player. I just feel bad for him.
Garrett. Does it make their defensive line worse? I mean, that was the core of their team. I know they locked up that secondary. It's going to be interesting to see if they can keep a strong defense, because if they can't, I mean, they benefited from being one of the best defenses in the league, and they still weren't that great a team.
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah. Just Cleveland Brown fans, just hope that you get a top pick at this point.
I just want to know what Jared Verse did to deserve this.
Dude, I feel so bad for him. I
mean, like the Jared Verse slap to get sent to Cleveland.
For real. Poor guy. Poor freaking guy. Like, what's so sad is that, like, this defense that, like, Myles Garrett, of course, has been the story with that defense for years. Like, right? Like, the record-breaking, the talented defensive player of the years. Like this is so sad, because it's not, like, of course, Garrett was the centerpiece of that, and we'll really see how much it continues. Like, that defense actually has some, like, nice talent on it all around. Like, Mason Graham, I like. Schwersinger was, in the defensive rookie of the year conversation. If he didn't win it, part of me wants to say he did, but if he didn't, he was definitely like second or third. Like Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit as the leaders of that secondary, Tyson Campbell, like that is a pretty, like, all around a respectable defense. And now they're just getting, just the heart, the leader of it is gone. Jared Verse, I think, is still so talented. I think, like, he won't get the sack production of Myles Garrett, but I think that from a talent perspective, they still have a talented young player there. But it's just him, and not even just the loss of Myles Garrett. I think the loss of Jim Schwartz is going to be something to look at, because the Browns, per usual, they botched that whole thing up. They didn't want to give Jim Schwartz the job as head coach. They gave it to Todd Monken, former Ravens offensive coordinator, now coming in. So Jim Schwartz is out there somewhere. Justin's battling hay fever over there. Like the Browns will be battling to disprove many things, and they're going to try to prove that they are just more than we're the Cleveland Browns. But they probably are just going to be that this year for the most part. So let us move on from the AFC North. Let us go on to the next division that was eliminated. This team got a playoff win. The wild card team, the non-division winning team in this division, defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers, went to the next round, and fell short, disappointing again. It is the AFC South, and we were talking about that team. We were talking about this division. We'll get to the playoff teams here in a second. Let's go to the two teams, Justin. Let's reverse it a little bit. Let's go to the teams that missed out on postseason play last year. The Tennessee Titans have been a mess for several seasons in a row. It's really all fallen apart since Mike Vrabel left the team. They tried to go in a new direction, quickly figured out they made the wrong decision in that new direction, and they were trying to reassess everything and change everything. And they basically decided, what if we get the bald guys that ran the New York teams before? Robert Saleh is the head coach. Brian Daboll is the offensive coordinator. I think they have the baldest coaching staff in the league. Cannot confirm it for historical context, but it feels like that is the case. Justin, Cam Ward, I mean, it felt like so many downs just in terms of like what and who he was playing with. But he did have some moments in his rookie season. He had some bright spots, and it looked like he was starting to get more comfortable in the back half of the year. Now you're putting him with a guy in Brian Daboll who's worked with a number of pretty dang good quarterbacks in his own right before. Carnell Tate has been added to this wide receiver room. Like, you got to give him credit. They were willing to spend a decent chunk of change this offseason on the offensive and defensive end with guys. Likely to be the case that they're going to finish last again, but Can Titans fans, Justin, this season expect that they'll be a more respectable fourth-place division team? Like, not a 2-15, but maybe more of like a solid 6-11 that are going to bother some of the teams that are to the top of their division?
The Tennessee Titans are going to win a Super Bowl, and here's why. After hiring Robert Saleh and then
I know where you're going.
and then getting all these ex-Jet and Giant players, and the way, like, it's just so poetic and perfect that I'm not saying necessarily this year, but like soon. It's coming. This is going to be an excellent team. They're going to be so much better for no reason other than this, by the way. There's no other this is just all. They're just going to win a Super Bowl. All right, that's all I have to say about it. It's over.
Just pure spite from God. Just pure spite from God. Hey, we were joking so much in the group. We were joking so much in the group. Justin thinking about it made him walk off. It is so true. We were joking about it during the offseason. The amount of former Jets and Giants players and like coaching staff members that this team added was just absolutely absurd. They made a trade with the Jets. They got Jermaine Johnson. They got John Franklin Myers. They signed Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm forgetting
Cordell Flott. Like there's Solomon Thomas, like Tony Adams. There's so many guys.
The whole team
that played well and will play well for these guys because they understand the system. They are really good coaches. They were just in New York.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Oh my God, the Tennessee Titans are going to win the 2028 Super Bowl. It's going to be crazy. Which here's the funniest thing. The person that'll be in the least amount of pain on this podcast because of that will be me. Because remember, my
perennial Titans hater.
Yes, but here's the thing. My blood feud was mainly because of Ryan Tannehill. that was the predominant thing. You will be suffering as a Jets fan seeing former Jets players win. And then Rick, on his side, it's going to be double because the pod wife is a Giants fan. So it's going to suck for her to see that. And then him is the perennial Cam Ward doubter on this program. So would not have imagined
Cam Ward's going to be the guy. I just said the Titans are going to win a Super Bowl.
True, but you have to assume by some way divine intervention they're going to make Cam Ward like play like the quarterback that the Jets and Giants wish they had. Like he's going to outperform Jackson Dart and Geno Smith put together this season, which is I don't know how high of a bar that is.
I feel like when you subtract things,
two negatives, you multiply negatives, they eventually
they'll make each other worse.
Oh my goodness. Who would have thought 3 years ago or 4 years ago when this podcast started that I would be the one least affected by a Titans Super Bowl contending window that we're making up? That is a plot twist I never saw coming. Speaking of plot twists you never saw coming, ladies and gentlemen, the Indianapolis Colts, because that's what last season was for them. They looked like one of the best teams in football in the first 9 games of last season. And then everything fell apart.
Well, losing your quarterback does that.
Indeed. Daniel Jones is on the roster. I don't think I'd have to look back at more recent reports. I just don't see him starting from day one. I think the plan is for them to survive the first couple weeks of the season, and then eventually he will be injected back into the starting lineup. So this team is going to have to make do. They paid a pretty penny to keep Alec Pierce there. Jonathan Taylor is there. You're going to hope that between Tyler Warren and Downs that offense takes a next step. Offensive line lost a little bit from last season. They're going to hope that the new starters that they have in there are going to be able plug and play right away. And I think the Colts defense, they made some like a little tweak here, tweak there. I feel like they're the definition of just like a solid defense. Like middle of the road. Some weeks they'll play like a top 10, top 8 defense. Like they have those weeks, but for the most part they're middle of the road. So Justin, to me, it's just a game of survival if you're Indy, right? Like what else can they do to stay afloat? Because we have 2 more teams to talk about, and those were the 2 teams in this division that made it last year.
They have to win the games that they need to stay in it before Daniel Jones gets back. Assuming that he can come back and be the MVP candidate that he was at the beginning of last year. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to, because they were just a juggernaut of a team in the first 6-7 games. Jonathan Taylor was on fire. Daniel Jones was on fire. They were just an unbelievable offensive and really defensive team. They were arguably the most complete team in football. Which is always like a devastating thing to see when it's stopped by injury. Right. So hopefully they can get healthy. Hopefully they can get their things together, and hopefully they can be the team we saw last year.
Yeah. And, they made the big trade deadline acquisition that maybe if even how things fell apart could still be a positive for them. And Sauce Gardner, he's going to be the leader of that secondary. They still have DeForest Buckner being the leader of that team in the front line along with Latu. And then offensively, I think for me, whether Daniel Jones is able to make it to the start of the season, I mean, I'm questioning it, but I'm not going to just say it can't happen because obviously medical marvel science and all that jazz. But let's say even if he can make it to the start of the season, if he does start week 1, or if they still need to kind of hold him back for a couple of weeks and you just have to survive. I think the number one thing for me in with this team, with Steichen and them, is just can you get that juice you need offensively? You know, I almost kind of talk about it from with the Ravens, right? Like we know the talent of Jonathan Taylor. Alec Pierce had a phenomenal season last year. He has to do it again, but he had a phenomenal season. With how much he's being paid, he's going to get the touches, we assume. You know, do you have do you have the new second guy there? Because Pierce was the number 2 in theory behind Pittman's number 1. Now he's no longer there. He went to Pittsburgh. Like now Pierce is the number 1. Now you need someone to emerge as the number 2. Like to me, if they're going to compete with the top 2 teams in this division, they need to have a consistent second threat. And whether it's one of the wide receivers, right? Maybe it's Downs, or could we see a stupidly good breakout season from Tyler Warren? I think there's a chance if Daniel Jones is starting from day 1, there might be an outside shot at a Tyler Warren. He could flirt with 900, 1,000 yards even. Like that. That's how talented the belief of his upside is for him. Now, is it too early to make that tell? Maybe, but like that is the belief that people have in his ability and what he can do for the Colts.
I mean, it's an interesting thought, but I just feel like they don't really run that kind of offense. When they were good, it was because Daniel Jones was that dual threat. You had to make sure. Sure, there were times you had to throw the ball down the field, and he was also good that way. But it's not like they were always throwing the ball down the field. They kept the defense honest, but they succeeded based on, is the ball going left? Is the ball going right? Is the ball going to the center? And which guy is going to have it? When you have to cover 2 out of 3 routes because you're not sure if the quarterback's going to run one way or the running back's going to run the other way, it becomes very difficult. And then that brings the defense up, and that's when you keep the defense on and throwing it over the top, which is where Alec Pierce succeeded. I don't necessarily know that they're going to have that number 2 receiver that's always going to be a perennial 800, 3-4 touchdown guy, just because I don't know if there's room in their offense for it. That doesn't mean it can't happen. I don't know if I see it. And I don't know if I see Danny Dimes really running an offense of that caliber. You know what I mean? I think they got to stick to what they do best, stick to the moves that, they made that put him in that position. And if another guy has the ability to break out, that's great. But I don't know if that's on Danny Dimes' shoulders.
Right. And I don't even necessarily want to say that's on him because he is rehabbing. I'm more so putting on, like you mentioned, it's like, if you're Shane Steichen, can you, do what you did in the first half of last season?
No, but like
maximize his ability again.
I know what you're saying.
No, go.
I know what you're saying. I'm saying, like, I don't know if that second or third receiver getting those kinds of yards is built into this offense. You don't want to change your game plan so much halfway through the year just because the quarterback changed. You know what I mean? You want your team to be in a flow. You want to be able to plug and play that guy. So if you're going to change the offense so drastically to the point where you think a guy's going to get that, Danny Dimes might lose his job to injury. You know what I mean? So, and that's a major thing to do when you just signed a guy for 2 years, $80 million.
Yeah.
So what is the game plan week 1 if he's not playing? Are you making that change to try and get these guys involved? If you're not, and if you are, is that still the game plan when Danny Dimes gets back? That's a major thing.
Yep. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, and ultimately this is all going to hinge on, we're about 3.5, 4 weeks away, give or take.
Is it that close? Jeez.
Yeah, time flies, eh? Will Daniel Jones be starting week 1? That's going to be the ultimate question that, as each day, goes by, we're going to get closer and closer here soon enough. Justin, let's give a double dose of the 2 teams that made the playoffs in this division last year. It's the Houston Texans. They made it off the back of their defense, and it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, who the fantastic season they had last year. Defense was pretty respectable, but it was that offense that you started to see some things, even if it didn't always translate, even if it may not have translated in the final stat sheets always. It was the offense that Liam Cohen was able to unlock at least a slightly different gear there. The Houston Texans, of course, this amazing defense that they have. Will Anderson Jr. and Derek Stingley are leading the way. The number one question everyone is going to have is the offense. And CJ Stroud, how much of the last 2 seasons of regression people believe is from him? How much of it is that teams have started to figure him out? And how much is it that, we talk about what the Bengals have had to do with the offensive line the last couple of years, and it might be right there alongside them for the amount of offensive line changes that they've had to make over the last couple of years. So that's on their end of things. Then when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, then, for the Texans, it's who they've added to the team to try to make a difference to help their quarterback. It feels like with the Jaguars, it's almost how much you lost from the team this offseason, and are you going to be able to fight against that with what you have internally? Because the Jaguars, they lost a couple of pieces, predominantly on that defensive side of things. You know, you lose your top linebacker in Lloyd, who he's just so phenomenal last season. He goes to the Carolina Panthers. I still don't understand how he got so underpaid. The dude should have made at least another 10, 15 mil more. I don't know what his agent is doing there, but he find you a new one. But the Jacksonville Jaguars lost a good few pieces last season, and they're going to kind of hope that it's the in-house growth. They're hoping for, you know, a year two boom between Cohen and Trevor Lawrence. You know, can Brian Thomas Jr. show us again the flashes he showed in his rookie season, which I personally think he still can. I still think he has that kind of burst in him. I think he was really, really injury riddled all of last season. Can he do that? And then with the Texans, Justin, as we kind of mentioned, we believe the defense is going to be solid once again, right? It's going to be the O-line. And have they finally found the combination to keep CJ Stroud upright? So between those two teams, Justin, flip a coin, throw a dart at the board, whatever, you know, misnomer I can use to describe it. Which way are you leaning to being more confident in them going into this 2026 campaign?
Ooh, more confident. I don't know. I feel like it really is a coin flip. It's funny because I feel like they both have very similar issues in different ways. The question is, are you keeping your quarterback upright? Are you keeping them healthy? And is your wide receiver room going to stay healthy and available? Because the Texans also had a lot of issues with a rash of injuries in there. What was at one point the most stacked receiver room in the NFL like 2 years ago. And then as of last year, they were scrambling for guys on the waiver wire because they didn't have anyone to catch the ball from CJ Stroud when he was healthy.
Yeah. Nico Collins was hurt and Tank Dell missed an entire season.
Yeah. And they lost Cooks. They had so many guys. Woods was there. He retired, or did he go somewhere else? Doesn't matter. He
retired. Yeah, he retired.
So, like, yeah, where are your pass catchers? What are they doing? And can they help take some pressure off your quarterback? And can you fix the offensive lines? It really is a toss-up. I haven't really looked at the schedules yet, so I don't have our records for these teams. But it is kind of a toss-up for me in my mind.
No, I don't blame you, because I think for – like CJ Stroud's been going through it in terms of podcast discourse and even analysts on, you know, certain 4-letter networks where one of them just straight up says if CJ Stroud was on fire and I had water, I would not put the fire out, which is a crazy sentence to say, whether you're a Texans fan or not. Absolutely absurd. I don't even think I reached that levels of hate on this podcast in the Tennessee Titans Tannehill era.
Rick has. Just asking about a country you've never heard of.
Just ask him about Belgium during the World Cup.
Yeah.
But it's really telling to me that, you know, CJ Stroud, I'm with you. I am a little bit, you know, kind of 50-50 in it. If I had to lean one way over the other, I'm leaning towards the Texans just because I feel the fact that they've kept that defense still so consistent once again year to year, and if you believe in just baseline progression, if Will Anderson and Stingley are going to even somehow get even better than what they are, which they're already both all-pro team caliber players, if they just even more so solidify that this year, I think the strength of the defense for Houston is where I'm leaning towards for them. Whereas I think, me, Jacksonville just lost way too much this offseason with a couple of their guys, like especially Lloyd in the middle. Like when you lose like the heartbeat of your front seven in your best linebacker, they're going to need someone to burst out onto the scene very quickly on that defense.
Major thing.
So that's part of the reason why I'm leaning towards it. And I don't know, I was tough on him during the postseason, but I'm more than willing to give CJ Stroud like one more shot. That I think a lot of the last 2 seasons has been the defenses have gotten to him in the snap of a second. You know, like you can't make a progression to your second or third read if you're being wrapped up in the middle of the first one. It's just not possible. So if the Texans have finally figured out that offensive line to at least just be respectable, because respectable would be a hell of a lot better than what they had last year, I think you'd see a significant improvement. Like this Texans team should have beaten the Patriots last year in the postseason, right? Like they should have beaten them. And it's part of it is the offensive line, and they allowed those pressures to get to CJ Stroud. Now, he definitely had a boneheaded interception in one of those plays. But for the most part, the belief is that you give CJ Stroud time, maybe his weapons are back, you'll have that. And that's why I'm leaning towards Houston, because I think they're going to get more back this season to help them out versus I think Jacksonville just lost a little too much for me. I'm not saying they're going to crater. Like, I still think this should be a good Jaguars team because to me, Justin, I want to throw this name at you. He wasn't thought of, start of last season. There was the highlights of him, which way he's going to play, da-da-da. But I'm not saying he's the X factor to decide their season, but how critical do you think it is for this Jaguars team to maybe the flexibility is nice, but can they finally and should they finally lock down Travis Hunter to a position for his NFL career? Because I think trying to shift him a little bit too much, I don't know. It didn't feel like he was super effective last season, and I'm not sure if they're going to get much out of it year two trying to do the same thing again. But maybe I might be wrong. What do you think?
I think part of it has to do with the fact that there's a lot of time that Trevor Lawrence wasn't on the field, and there isn't really anyone else. So it didn't matter where you put him. He was getting coverage. And now if you want to use him to draw defenses and use him as a decoy, that's fine, but you're not going to get the production, and he's not going to be happy. And I don't think it necessarily works out long term unless you end up winning some sort of Super Bowl or something like that, which I don't really see in their future. They're not the Tennessee Titans. But if you do lock him down, I don't want to say you take away a dimension from him being on the field, but like you do limit his hits, but you make him less of a threat. I guess maybe more of a threat in one place and less of a threat. I don't know.
So let me rephrase the question then. If let's say you needed to slightly edge one way over the other, like I'm not. Maybe you don't
not already.
Well, to me personally, I'm not even talking about pure playing splits. It's when they played him, he had a moment here and there, but it just never felt like he shined. You know what I mean? Like, it just never felt like he shined. Like, I feel because Trevor Lawrence, to his credit, he did play all 17 games last season. He did start all 17. Now,
he didn't play the whole games, a lot of them, though.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe some of that hurt him. But Travis Hunter also, to be fair, he got hurt halfway through the season as well. He didn't get to finish out his rookie year. So maybe we would have seen something in the second half of the season that would change our minds. But
I mean, what do you choose?
Well, no, this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying
such a dynamic player on both sides of the ball that like you have to replace that production somehow. So now what? Are you going to go out and you're going to draft the top 10 cornerback?
I mean, you can only pray and hope, but they weren't able to do that because they didn't have their original first round pick. But what I'm saying, let me rephrase the question. I'm not saying you take him off of one side and you only play him on one, because I think with how much you invested, you can't do that. At least not this season. If you had to
run him into the ground though.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So if you had to pick a side where you lean him a little bit towards one way or the other, but you still give them the flexibility to play the other position, maybe more like a 65-35 split, is there a way you maybe would lean more than the other, like whether it's offense or defense right now?
It's hard because they kind of need both.
And that's the sad part. And that's why part of me
depends on what you need, but I'm not going to lie. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if I can really make a choice. Every time I'm like, all right, I think I'm going to go to receiver. I'm like, yeah, but like, imagine having him back in the secondary, right, like 80% of your plays. And then I'm like, all right, do running back. Like, they need some real help at receiver. And he's like a really talented guy. He can get down the field and he can really make plays happen. So like, it's
a hard question. It's a hard question because you need someone on either side of the ball.
You are hurting the kid by not locking it down.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So
there's only so long you could play 80% of a game.
Exactly. It's gonna get to you before the rookie deal's even up. So it's gonna be interesting to see if they start to lean one way or the other over the other. I think that my personal opinion, if BTJ can get back to that high level he performed in his rookie season, I think it makes your decision a hell of a lot easier. If he can become the number one guy he looked like in that first campaign, then that gives you the flexibility you can start to lean Hunter to more be a corner. And then you don't need to worry.
Wouldn't you rather have him as a number two? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
You keep going. Like, imagine Travis Hunter as a number two receiver with Brian Thomas Jr. having the year that we think he can have in year 3.
Well, Justin, Rick's guy, Jacoby Myers, is on that Jaguars team. Don't you forget. Travis Hunter might have to settle for being the number 3.
No, Jacoby Myers had a really good year on a really bad team. He has been like a staple and essentially quarterback proof there in Vegas. So I can't really knock him for saying that he might have a good season this year.
I think it will. I think I mean, the Jaguars made the playoffs, but I think the trade deadline decision that those AFC South teams made last year, but with the Jaguars going for Myers and then with the Colts getting Sauce Gardner, I think the dividends are going to pay off this season more than anything else. That's why trade deadline always interests me, because honestly, like, I don't see it clearly right now. Like, maybe we need to let the season play out. I would actually expect the Texans to be a player at this year's trade deadline potentially, but that's a discussion for another time. All right.
Well, my discussion for another time is going to be a would you rather, Trevor Lawrence or CJ Stroud.
Now that's going to be a conversation. Speaking of conversations, Justin, let's move on to the next division, the AFC West, as their last representative lost in the AFC Championship game, and let's talk about that team right away. The Denver Broncos, Justin, they surprised a whole heck of a lot of people, winning the division last year, tying at the top of things in the conference, 14-3 record. They believed, to say the very least. Bo Nix, he did have his struggles early in last season, but he started to play a bit better. And the key thing was just the complete performances they were getting, but the clutch performances they were getting in second halves, especially. This was a team that in the second half of last season were a second half of the game kind of team, right? The timely interception, the big play made, things like that. And this is a team that, for the most part, like, a good amount of the roster came back with some, key decisions, key roster choices here and there that they made to improve internally. What do you think, this team that believes that they believe that they were an injury away from winning the AFC Championship game last year, and they kind of showed it, because this is like a 90% roster retention, it feels like, for them. Oh, okay, maybe they lost a few guys, maybe 90's too high, but like, starters wise, they brought a lot of the same guys back.
I would too. I mean, I agree with them. They were an injury away, and I mean, the kid showed some real grit and still kept him in the game even with the injury. It's tough. You gotta hope that he comes back and he is doing what he was doing and showing the same kind of growth that he was showing. But this is a team that we've expected to kind of be like this for a long time. I mean, if you remember when they traded for Russ, 6 years ago now?
Oh God, was it that long?
Thought that that's what this team was going to be. They had the defense. They went out and they got Sean Payton after trading for Russ, after Hackett was there 1 year, I think it was.
Yeah, I was going to say the first season of Russell Wilson, that was the Nathaniel Hackett debacle.
Yeah, that was that, and the team fell apart, and then traded Jerry Jeudy, and then Hamler retired because of the heart thing, and the receivers went down, and then they kept trading receivers, and they were fixing the offensive line. They couldn't get a running back, and then all of a sudden now, this is finally the team. Like, it's crazy, by the way, that they kept it together for that long.
Yeah.
Defensively and skill position-wise, to still be in that position where they were a quarterback away. You got to think that they're still there. And if Bo Nix can be that quarterback, hey, they have a real shot of winning.
Yeah. And they're going to be tested this season. They're going to be battle hardened. If they can make it through the way again, because let's be honest, let's give some credit where credit's due. And we're going to bring this point back up with a team we're going to talk about in the next division. People didn't expect them to make it as far as they did. A lot of people earmarked them as a divisional round upset, right? And they proved themselves. They proved their mettle against a really great regular season MVP caliber quarterback. Guy won the freaking MVP award in his career. This team had proved itself in the playoffs once, and they a freak injury for Bo Nix cost this team what would have been the Super Bowl matchup. And who knows how differently things are. To your point, they kept this roster construction so consistent for so long, and that feels like a Sean Payton thing, right? I think more than anything, he values having
the
a
thing, right?
Roster. Yeah, no, for sure. But I think in terms of because Sean Payton, let's be honest, Sean Payton's probably, if we had to tier coaches on how much influence and how many discussions they have with their general manager about their roster, Sean Payton is probably up there for most guys, right? Considering the power that he had in New Orleans and how close it was there. He probably had a bit of a say here in the last couple seasons of the kind of roster, some of the kinds of players he wants. Now, obviously, the GM has to ultimately make the final decision. They have to offer the contract, the negotiations, and stuff like that. A head coach can only have and say so much unless they actually are also the general manager. But Sean Payton feels like a kind of guy. He's not going to BS you. He knows who he wants on his team, and he knows, or he thinks he knows, who he can get the most out of. I feel like for him to have this team carry over a vast majority of the starters that they had last season And they dealt with a little bit of bad luck with the injuries last year for parts of the season, right? Like I think last year was another year where Sutton wasn't 100% for them. I think even like Surtain missed a couple of games, but they still went 14-3, right? And they added a guy offensively I think actually could make a difference just scheme-wise for them in Jalen Waddle in this offseason, right? Like this team is go big or go home. They're going for it, and I got to respect that.
They still got Troy Franklin.
Yep.
Who's the running back that they have there still?
J.K. Dobbins.
Yes, from the Ravens. Look, the question really is now also because going into the year, everyone was not sure which team was going to be really the favorites if it wasn't going to be the Chiefs.
Right.
And then is this a team of opportunity, or what are they that good? Because if you remember, a lot of people said their schedule was suspect. They won the games they needed to win. They had a couple things go their way. Now you have to turn around and you say, all right, are you winners, or did you get lucky to be in the position that you were and you get screwed by injury? And that's really going to be what I'd like to see.
100%. And they're going to be battle tested. You know, they're facing some division winners this year, right? The AFC West is taking on the NFC West this year.
So absolutely, a much tougher schedule this year.
Yep, they're going to face the Seahawks. They're going to face the Rams. They're going to face the Niners. They're going to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to take on the Carolina Panthers, right? Like when you win your division, the schedule gets harder. We'll bring this back up with another team, but that was a big thing last year, and we're going to see just how true this team was. Part of me thinks I think they'll rise up to the challenge in some of those games. I think this is I don't want to say deceptively good. I think this is a Broncos team. I think we'll re-surprise some people, but in a different way this year. The Chargers. It feels like ever since they got Jim Harbaugh back, it's been the same thing each of the first 2 years. Solid regular season. You know, Justin Herbert, that first year, the numbers were kind of down, but there was good efficiency. He brought the numbers back up a little bit last year with all the injuries, and that's the key thing. It's just injury after injury after injury. Just it feels like no matter what, Justin, this goddamn lightning bolt team is going to get hit by lightning. It feels like with some of the guys that they lose. Will they get good luck this year? I feel like that has to be the question. But I'm not saying they're perfect, but will they get good luck? Because dear Lord, it feels like this team is just someone goes down every single year in preseason.
Well, again, it's the same questions every year, even before Harbaugh was there. And is Herbert going to stay healthy? Can they finally win a playoff game?
Yep.
And is he going to start to click in the Harbaugh offense? Because it really feels like he hasn't. His numbers have been way down since he started there. The consistency has been way down. It is a more traditional offensive playing as opposed to like the Wild West quarterback that he was to start his tenure.
Right.
So can he get back to being a gunslinger in this production-focused offense? And if not, are they going to start to look at different quarterbacks?
Yeah, and you look at the roster around him, this is a relatively solid core. It's Herbert leading the way. It's Omarion Hampton, who his rookie season last year was cut short due to injury in his own right, but he was having a pretty good season. Lad McConkey, we believe he could turn things back around. You have QJ. Justin, that's your guy, Quentin Johnson.
QJ started the year. I think he in the first 5 games, he had 500 yards and 7 touchdowns. He lit the league on fire in the beginning. Can he stay consistent?
Yes, him. Trey Harris, Aronde Gaddison as your tight end. If Rashawn Slater, by the grace of God, can finally make it to the regular season.
That's also a major thing because it's always the line because Joe Alt went down also last year. They lost both tackles.
That was the number one thing.
That's a major thing. When both tackles go down, it's hard to keep your quarterback upright.
And genuinely speaking, this is not hyperbole. They might be the best tackle combo in the NFL. That might be the best.
It'd be cool to find out.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. But they on paper look to be the best.
I mean, how many minutes have they played together? Not games, minutes.
That's a good question. Someone please fact check that for us, because that is a damn good question. Oh my God, poor team. And then defensively, if they have good pieces, I'm almost concerned. Is this defense? This might sound like a weird thing. Is this defense young enough? Because it feels like the last couple of years, Denzel Perriman's once again back. It's another year of old man Khalil Mack. Derwin James is another year older. Dante Jackson isn't necessarily a spring chicken. He's 30. He turns 31 during the season. The defense has been good the 2 seasons with Jim Harbaugh on paper. I guess my only concern is if this is finally the year for the offense, because knowing the way the Chargers' luck is, this is exactly how it always goes. Is this defense maybe going to slightly regress because you're kind of hoping for a lot of guys that are going to either be at 30 or on the wrong side of 30. You need to hope that they can survive yet another season and they can play another pretty good campaign. How many times can you hope that Khalil Mack can give you double-digit sacks again? You can only have that hope so many times. I guess he does keep defying it, to be fair. He is such a good player, though.
I mean, he's also a guy that now he's getting older. He keeps missing time for injuries.
Yeah.
This defense is only going to be so good for so long because the older they get, the more they're going to miss time for, smaller little nicks and bumps and bruises because you can't recover after 5-6 games of getting your ass kicked at 38 or 35 as opposed to when you were 26 and 27.
Yeah.
It's a major difference.
Yeah, or even like 30 for 25 because like I mentioned two of the guys like Derwin James and Dante Jackson, right? I know for a lot of people that's like, oh, they're pretty young. No, they're 30. They're both 30 years old now.
So,
those boys have been in the league for a little bit.
And their job is to hit people.
Exactly. Like you kind of have to strike here if you're the Chargers. This kind of feels like a season where you need to kind of have the season Denver had last year.
And they're not really in that position, it seems like. And let's face it, these are the guys that keep them in the season and keep them in the playoff race when these guys are going down on offense. So
yeah, it's going to be something to say at the very least. But of course, with the talk of the Broncos and the Chargers, the top two teams in the division last year, part of the reason they were the top two is because everything fell apart for this team. And if there's one thing that people are projecting, it's they're expecting the quarterback to be back there once again. Justin, is the Kansas City Chiefs. The expectation and belief is that Patrick Mahomes will be ready for the first week of the season. They signed Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP, to a contract in the offseason. Have they finally addressed the running back issue? Wide receiver room, they're hoping that as long as their wide receivers don't get trucked by their tight ends in week one, certain guys, poor Xavier Worthy last year, or they don't, commit felonies off the field, Rashee Rice, that if their wide receiving core can stay out of trouble and stay out of the injury room, that they can finally have a half-decent wide receiving core for this team. And there is still the belief that even though he hasn't been signed yet, and granted, who knows if he'll play again, but if he can play again, the belief to everyone is that Tyreek Hill is going to make a return to Kansas City at some point here in the somewhat near future. Travis Kelce is potentially coming back for a last hoorah. The offensive line still is Creed Humphrey. They have Josh Simmons there. That they drafted, the belief is that it should still be a fine offensive line, and the defense is the defense. They have one of the greatest defensive coordinators you have to give credit in the last 25 years, right? So, Justin, should people be scared? Talk about the Broncos, talk about the Chargers. What if you had to give it a 1 to 10? 1 being versus 10 being like a you live inside of like a dead zombie game, right? Like Left 4 Dead 2 or Walking Dead or something like that. What would you rate the fear factor people should have that this Kansas City team can get back to? I'm not going to say the standard they were, but let's say like 70, 75% of it, because Kansas City at 75% is still an extremely dangerous team.
My default is going to be high 7, 8, just because as long as they have that quarterback and coach combination, they're going into a season there realistically is no reason that we should not be scared. They've proven time and time again that the second you doubt them, they're coming for you and they're going to step on your throat. That being said, I'm very interested to see what they do this year without some of those pieces that we've seen on defense for so long. I mean, they traded away Trent McDuffie. They don't have some of the same secondary players that they've had in past. We had issues with their secondary last year, which is also going to affect the way that they get after the quarterback because their front seven's another year older. So what is this team now without a defense? We saw them win 1 Super Bowl on offense, but we saw them win 2 with defense. And they were a much scarier team when they were a very strong defense and Pat Mahomes could sit back and pick you apart. Can he get back to that young guy that used to sling it and be that offensive juggernaut that they needed day in and day out? Or is that part of his career behind him? And is he too set in his Andy Reid ways to light up the field like that anymore? That's the real question that I want to see because I feel like they're going to need to rely on Pat Mahomes more than they ever have.
Yeah, no, I think that's more than fair because I thought this way last season, and man, I still kind of feel this way. I think this has to be the last year of Travis Kelce's career. Like he just did not look good for so much of last season. It looked like he lost.
The offense itself was just not.
Oh no. Yes, 100%. It's not just him, but like I think when you look at those peak Kansas City years, like remember they traded Tyreek Hill no problem, and then they won back-to-back Super Bowls. And part of the reason was that because you had a guy who's like, especially in the playoffs, is one of the best guys to have. But we talked about it last year. When you lose a step, it may not show it maybe in a single game, but over the course of a full 17 games. I mean, losing that step is the difference between him being able to make a catch versus, he's fully covered and the ball just can't get anywhere near his hands because he can't make that separation. Because separation was his mastery, not because of blazing speed, but because
he's a great route runner, and he understood the need on the field and when he needed to, be where he needed to be and when he needed to be creative. No, but my question is, I mean, I don't put it on Travis Kelce. I mean, how many offensive-based teams won with a tight end as their number one weapon? Because like I said, those 2 Super Bowls in the back end, they were the defensive juggernaut. Sure, Mahomes and Kelce was a great connection, and they were able to do it very, very easily and very, very quickly. But they were in good field position, and he was the number one weapon for a team that was, keeping close. When they won the Super Bowl offensively, they had Tyreek Hill. They had a dominant running game. Like, they were a much different team. Kelce was never a true. I mean, he was. Don't get me wrong. He's a Hall of Famer. He's definitely a number one option, but he's not that guy, especially late in his career. So that was never going to be an option for them to win on the back of him catching the ball. I just never saw it. They went and they made a lot of offensive moves that they thought would take the pressure off him. That didn't work out because guys couldn't stay healthy, couldn't stay on the field, couldn't stay out of jail. And that
last one.
And then they had to go back to relying on him. And as far as it got them, it wasn't enough to put them over the top. So now they're in a position again where they have to figure out the offense. They have to figure out what Mahomes is going to bring to the table. They look like they brought in the best running back that they've had since he's been there. The defense has question marks. The offensive pass catchers have question marks. What is Pat Mahomes going to do now that it's seemingly back onto his shoulders?
Back onto him. And I kind of also have to make the argument with Andy Reid as well. Like, can you pull out something new? Because the playbook on Andy Reid for when he was in Philly, right? And then the early years in Kansas City before, they developed Mahomes was that, Andy Reid, he's an amazing play caller, but once you get late into the season, once you get into the playoffs, it starts to get a little bit predictable. Like, you start to figure out his offense. You start to figure out his schemes.
I don't think that's an Andy Reid thing. I think that's a limited pieces. You have to do the best with what you are given. And that roster was just so limited offensively. They didn't have the horses to have a speedster, come out of the backfield. They didn't have the power back. So it limited their game and made them a little bit one-dimensional. Mahomes, sure, he could run it occasionally, if you put him in long, distance opportunities, but they really didn't want to run the ball with him to begin with. And then they didn't have guys,
which we saw why he tears his ACL because he has to try to do too much.
Guys that were stretching the field. I mean, they had Valdez-Scantling dropping balls. Hollywood Brown couldn't stay healthy. When he was on the field, he wasn't getting that open to begin with, and he was either getting overthrown or having his drop problems. All they had is Kelce, and he's never been a stretch the field guy. He's been a middle of the defense, down the field kind of guy sometimes. He's also been a yardage monster as well as a PPR guy, but he can't beat all those guys when he's 36.
No, 100%. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do. And if this defense, because we were already talking about it last year, and it's going to have to really be the case this year because you mentioned it earlier, and this will be the last point on the Chiefs. Like, this is essentially a whole new secondary. You mentioned the safety Cook went to the Cincinnati Bengals. Both of their starting defensive backs, their starting corners last year, end up going to the Los Angeles Rams. L'Jarius Sneed has returned to Kansas City. He signed with them after he was released, and they traded up for Mansour Delane in the draft as well, right? They drafted him very high up. So a completely new defense there, to say the very least, because they lost someone in the linebacking core as well last season. As well, they do still have Drew Tranquill and Nick Bolton, but they lost one of their starting linebackers from the year before. So it's going to be interesting to see. And can somebody step up around Chris Jones? That's another guy that's another year older. These guys were there for the period of success. They might start to see the period of the fall off as well. So it's going to be interesting to see there. And the last team, the Las Vegas Raiders. Look, potential, maybe cool. Will they retrade Max Crosby? Who knows? Will they keep him for a bit? Who knows? But Fernando Mendoza is the story of this team. They have Kirk Cousins. I think, Kirko is there to teach Fernando Mendoza the ropes, probably teach him some generational bag getting lessons and how to make sure that your agent doesn't lose in negotiations, because Kirk Cousins' agent has definitely found a way to win in so many of those. But Fernando Mendoza, Ashton Genty, Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers, Colton Miller being the lead guy on the offensive line. They signed Tyler Linderbaum to that stupidly good deal. They have Jackson Powers-Johnson. That's a pretty good offensive line. And then defensively for this team, we have to assume that they're going to have Max Crosby to start the season unless they do make this surprise trade. But they retooled Kwity Paye, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, Eric Stokes, Jeremy Chin. Like they added so many different pieces through the free agency and the draft. Baseline is to say that this is probably going to be the 4th seed in the division, but I think of all of the divisions we've talked about so far, let me just include the last one because I don't think any of that 4th place team is going to be better. Let me say it like this. I think the Raiders' 4th place this year is probably going to be better than the 3rd place for some other divisions. This is a young, talented on paper team that they're going to have growing pains, but I think they could actually be exciting to watch this year because they were not last season. Oh my God.
There's definitely something more there. It's going to be interesting to see how they balance Kirko and Mendoza. What I'm really excited to see is this revamped offensive line and how it affects Ashton Jeanty. If Jeanty could really get going this year, are they going to change the way they call plays? Are they going to give him the ball more? What are they going to do to get this young former first-round pick a real chance to thrive there out in the desert? Because it's a very important thing. It's almost, if you can't get that running game going and get your receivers, somewhat going, what's the point of spending all this money and capital on quarterbacks?
Yeah.
You're never going to do anything if you can't get the rest of the team going.
100%. So it's gonna be the story of the season. And I mentioned all the new things. There's one extra new thing to mention there. Clint Kubiak, new head coach, first-time head coach. It's gonna be interesting. That offensive mind with the potential of Fernando Mendoza. It's gonna be very interesting to see what they do.
Mind they've had there in a long time.
Exactly. I genuinely think I think that I almost said Texans. No, I think the Raiders will be exciting to watch. The Texans wish they could have Clint Kubiak back. No, I think I think Fernando Mendoza and the Raiders and Clint Kubiak. I think there'll be some fun games to watch from them next season. I think there's going to be a lot of fun to be had. All right, Justin. Last division, the division that was home to the defending is home to the defending AFC champions is in it. Let's handle the bottom of the division first. The great tank commander has brought his talents to New York. Geno Smith is there to ensure that a top quarterback eventually makes their way to the New York Jets in some way, shape, or form.
I told you they're cursed. They'll never get a quarterback. Doesn't matter who's their quarterback now.
There you go. Garrett Wilson is going to hope that someone can step up behind him. Breece Hall is forced for another year in the New York Jets. We'll see what he can do. The Jets are going to hope the offensive line can stay healthy because, I want to give them credit. They have some pretty good offensive linemen as a whole. I think Ola Fashanu and Armin Membo is actually a pretty young, talented duo at tackles. They just gotta hope they stay healthy, unlike the last pair of young, exciting tackles that they had there before.
I wish we still had Vera Tucker.
And then right, he'd be a phenomenal.
He went to the Patriots. Come on,
yeah, right.
Mitch going to the Celtics. Come on,
David.
Of all the teams.
David Bailey added into this front four. Of course, he was drafted. Tavondre Sweat, I believe, was the guy in the Titans deal that we mentioned. You got Demario Davis and Jamin Sherwood there as veterans in the linebacking core, and Mika Fitzpatrick was brought in as well as kind of like the leader. He's going to be kind of the veteran leader in terms of talent, career accomplishments, and stuff in that secondary. Before we get to the next team, one bold take from you, Justin, about the Jets this season.
Just end the suffering. That's what the Jets stand for. JETS. Just end the suffering.
Well, honestly, another team that might be hoping for that is the Miami Dolphins. It is Malik Willis and Devon Achane, and that's about it. That team sold off everybody else in existence last season. And if there are still a couple decent players on there, I promise you they're probably going to be dealt at this next trade deadline as well. New general manager, new head coach, new quarterback. It's not going to be pretty for the Miami Dolphins this season, to say the very least. Dolphins fans, I want to try to give you some credit here. I'm sorry, I'm just struggling. I'm struggling so much. They took Willie Gay from the Chiefs. They're the ones that paid Malik Willis. He's going to get the money in the starting time.
The question is going to be in Miami is, can the defense stay healthy now? Because if the defense can stay healthy, it'll show what they have and what they don't. This is one of those teams that I say every year. You're not playing to win a Super Bowl. You're playing to make sure that you are part of the answer next year. If you want to keep your job, you need to show why you are part of the answer. When things are not going well, what do you have to contribute so that we know when things are going well, maybe you're still part of our team.
Yeah, and the thing is, for a lot of those guys this year is they'll have the opportunity because they brought in a decent chunk of new players. It's the first time new GM and the head coach. These are the guys that brought some of you in. So there is a vested interest on their side that they hope some of you pan out, and there's an interest in your side. If this team isn't too good, but you're a bright spot, they might be willing to pay you a little bit. So we'll see what happens there on that end. Justin, the last two teams we're going to talk about, let's talk about the top two teams of this division. The Buffalo Bills, who were earmarked going into the playoffs as the favorite, with no Mahomes, with no Lamar Jackson, with no Joe Burrow, but they fell to the Denver Broncos in the AFC title game. And this is the other team that we referenced earlier that, a lot of people were questioning them, Justin, about. They also had the very light schedule on paper last year, and they're going to come into this year. They're going to have a tough schedule as well. They're going to start facing against Seattle. Of course, they're taking on their own division. They take on the NFC North this year. So there's the Bears on the schedule. There's the Packers. If we think the Lions are going to turn it around, they're going to take on the Chargers. They have the Chiefs on the schedule. Of course, I'm talking about the New England Patriots. This is these were you could honestly make an argument like that. Them and the Broncos, these were the top three teams in the AFC last season. And now two of these teams resting in the same division are going to be competing for the AFC East crown. The Bills clearly were not ready for the resurgence of the Patriots. If it's more than a year, we'll see. But at least the 2025 resurgence of them. Drake May looking like he was an MVP caliber quarterback. It seemed like they were starting to figure out something to the running game, and maybe now with a full offseason, they'll be able to do more. And, of course, they made the addition for A.J. Brown because nothing at all else happened off the field. If anyone in the New England Patriots organization this past year, nothing whatsoever occurred. No previous posts on social media, no pictures and videos were found of anyone else in that organization. Just a squeaky clean offseason as is expected from the Patriots on their end. And then, of course, with the Bills, new head coach, right? They got rid of McDermott. They bring in Joe Brady. They brought in DJ Moore to be the new guy there now, like in theory should be their number one receiver, to give Khalil Shakir more time and Keon Coleman a stay of execution before they finally trade him. Offensive line is relatively the same, except for an addition, and that defense is a little bit of retooling done to it and how they look. They added CJ GJ, but he got hurt early on in this training camp period, so we'll see what his long-term prognosis is. But Justin, these are the last two teams we're going to discuss. Your thoughts on? I know you hate both of them, but football field strictly.
I don't hate Buffalo.
Your thoughts on these two squads going into 2026? Can the Patriots, similar thing with the Broncos, can the Patriots prove that last year was not a one-off? And can the Bills, with Joe Brady, this is a completely new offensive, new coach, new way of thinking. Can he be the guy we talk about that unlocks something, right? Like you saw it with your Knicks this past season. Mike Brown was able to unlock a little bit of different something. Can Joe Brady be the guy? Can he unlock something different in this Bills team and they can finally break their curse? What do you think of these two teams?
I think that the Bills somehow still seem more than one or two pieces away, but are probably pegged to be the favorites in the AFC East. They finally got Josh Allen a number one receiver in DJ Moore. So we're going to see how that, how that works out. But there's just still something that's just a little bit off with this team that I can't put my finger on. We'll see what happens with Keon Coleman. Ray Davis had a really nice insurgence last year, really came on, especially towards the end of the year when they needed him. But they still seem to fall short, even without all of the Achilles heels quarterbacks that they've always lost to. So now those guys are back. They lost that opportunity, and we're going to see what's going on with them as the year goes on. The real question is, for me, does Drake May take a step forward? Is he the same guy as they were last year, or was that a one-off? Because this was really a major resurgence. A major explosion of talent from him. They really went out of their way to make sure that he has every opportunity to prove all of the doubters wrong. They went out and they got A.J. Brown. They signed Romeo Doubs. They have Keyshawn Boutte still. They still have Hunter Henry, who's been really great there. I mean, shoot, they got Demario Douglas and Mac Hollins on that roster as well on offense. And the running backs are still pretty solid. So we're going to see what they can really do offensively, what they can put together. The defense we know is going to be the same. The coach is still, I guess he's pretty good, whatever. But yeah, the question is going to be now, does Drake May come on? Is he the real long-term answer for the future? And can he lead them back to the promised land?
Yeah. It's going to be telling to see, because they were, Rick and I discussed it because we were doing the AFC side of the rankings and the free agency moves, and the Patriots felt very particular with where they spent their money when it was free agency, right? Like, they made the investment in Romeo Doubs. They got Elijah Vera Tucker. They, took the chance on, not took a chance, I should say, but take the Draymond Jones in free agency. And then they gave smaller deals there. And then they saved up for the big one, right? AJ Brown. The hope is that he's going to be the guy leading your offense going forward, that he could be that guy for you. And then as opposed to the Buffalo Bills, that they had quite a bit of work. Maybe part of it was the new head coach. Like, they had to make, some minor moves and tweaks on the roster. But you mentioned it, the DJ Moore acquisition, re-signing Connor McGovern, making sure you kept him in-house as your center going forward, getting a Bradley Chubb on the team, signing D. Alford. Again, CJ, we have to see what the long-term thing will be with him, but, assuming that he can be healthy, the role he could play for you. Geno Stone has depth in that secondary. Between the two teams, the Bills were a bit more active. Maybe that was because with the coaching change, with certain things, like they felt that they needed to tweak a little bit more versus the Patriots that, again, this is somewhat similar to Denver. They had a little bit more in terms of guys lost, but a lot of starters kept and just, tweaking here and there, like a lot more minor. So this is really two teams, slightly different approaches to the offseason. Or actually, I don't know. Maybe I think it's a lot more similar when I start to break it down. So these are two squads. We know they're going to face each other 2 times this year. We know they're going to be blood battles, and we know these are going to be the top 2 teams that are competing for the AFC East. One of these teams is going to win the AFC East, and the other team is likely going to be, we would assume, one of the first 2 wildcard spots in this conference. And that's going to be an interesting path. It was the Patriots winning it, and the Bills as the wild card this past year. That could be flipped back going forward this year, to say the very least. So, any last thoughts on either of these 2 teams, Justin? If right now, if you had to pick actually, ignore the Patriots for a second, because we know the number one thing that a lot of people are criticizing them for is the schedule, right? Now let's assume that similar to Denver, like they could potentially play up and they could get a couple extra wins, maybe a few losses. Like with the Bills, Justin, I know you said that, to you, they still feel like they're missing something. I've agreed. I agree with that sentiment because I've said in years past that it's missing something. Do you think that, with Joe Brady has something to prove here with himself being the first time head coach, and they have the roster that they have now, but do you almost think, I don't know, is it like an organizational cultural thing at this point where, like, does there need to be a commitment of kind of going all in with this team from the front office? Like, I'm just trying to think of something in my mind, like because we're saying we feel that there's something isn't. What is it about this team that we feel is missing right now? And are they going to be willing to make the big move that we think they might have to make to change it? Because I don't know. I'm not. It shouldn't. It's not a positive to say about a team. Yeah, we think you'll be good, but we still think you're missing that key thing that we've been saying you're missing for 5 years now. Like, I don't know. It feels so rehashed with the Bills. Like, help me find something, Justin. Like, what can they do differently this time around? You can unmute real quick.
I was just saying that I don't know, man. Yeah. I wish I had an answer for you, but I can't think of anything specific. It doesn't feel like it's there, and it just feels like it's going to be the same. They addressed certain things. They lost, spots in another thing, and it still does not feel like this is the roster that's going to take them all the way. Now, I don't know what specifically they need to add. I don't know if maybe it's a coaching change. I don't know if it's a regime change.
Well, they made the coaching change. They already did that part.
We'll see, but you know what I'm saying, though. Like, I don't know. It's tough to say, but the idea that we're saying that maybe they should go all in at this point is laughable because they've had Josh Allen and they've had this roster of really talented skill position players and defensive players for a while now. So if they haven't gone all in, there's a major issue because this is the window that they had. And the window is, as long as Josh Allen is young and healthy and still producing in this way. So if they're not going to go all in, then maybe they should look at a complete change of leadership from the ground up.
Yeah. Because like I will say this, if we're not talking about the Bills being a player at the trade deadline this year, there's a problem. Like I'm not earmarking anyone specific right now to them, as fun as that would maybe try to be. But like it just feels like it. If we're saying this about this team, let's be honest. There's definitely some people in that front office that probably have a similar feeling. It's their job to figure this out. It's their job to figure out what they have to do to get over that hump, and they need to do that job pretty quickly. I legitimately think like this Bills team right now has like a 6-week period to start the season. I don't know when their bye is off the top of my head, so I'll say 7 weeks in case like the bye week is in the first half. Like this Bills team needs to do their homework quickly this season and what they need to do and improve on because let's be honest, it's a disappointment last year, the fact that the Patriots usurped them so quickly. And we need to have that conversation again. So, all right, let's move back to the Patriots. Justin, last point. We kind of mentioned it with the Broncos, the schedule. Drake May, you said it yourself, like, let's, even if it's not the exact same, like, stats, let's say that maybe he throws a couple more interceptions by taking a couple more risks this year. They were so good last season. The defense was pretty darn good. That offense now adds A.J. Brown. The tough loss in the Super Bowl, do you think, not obviously A.J. Brown wasn't there for that, so this is more to the rest of the team. Do you think that Super Bowl loss is one of those things that can reinvigorate this team and they can have a strong season, or do you think that loss may have left them a little bit more reeling than meets the eye? That's my last question for them. Do you think that's how do you think that team is shaken or being shaped by that Super Bowl loss going into this next season?
I don't think it shook them. I think it showed them where they need to be. I mean, everyone and their grandmother knew that they were not the team that was going to beat the Seahawks. Anyone that was betting on them, I mean, in my mind, didn't know ball. Not even like from a bias thing, like, because as a Jets fan, if the Patriots were really meant to win, I would have gave them their flowers and I would have been complaining since the AFC Championship game, and it just wasn't it. You know what I mean? So I think that this team is smart enough and well disciplined enough by a guy like Vrabel and the management of that team that it's only a motivating factor. Now, I know it's difficult to get there and lose and then go back. It's been done very rarely. But if there was a regime that was going to instill that kind of confidence in a team, this is the one, unfortunately, for me, that I think could possibly do that. So I think that they've made the right moves. They brought in Super Bowl caliber and winning players. They've brought in leaders. Am I rooting for it? No. Am I picking it? Probably not. But shoot, I'm not saying it's not going to happen either.
No, it's more than fair. And I guess maybe last thing, like, what do you, between them and the Broncos, final question, then we end off the episode, Justin. Broncos or Patriots, who do you think is more likely to shed off the tag from last year of, they were as good as they were because the schedule was easy? If you had to just pick, not saying that it can only be one, but if you had to pick one that's more likely than the other.
Can I look at the schedule first? I'm kidding.
I can help you out with that real quick. Let me pull over to Denver here, and I could pull up their schedule, and I'll read you.
No, I don't need to do the whole schedule. I would say that I'm going to say it's probably the Patriots, just based on the moves they made. I think that they really capitalized on their young quarterback's potential, and you're relying in Denver on someone to come back from injury and be the same, which is always a wild card.
More than fair. Boom. It has been spoken. Justin chooses the Patriots. Clip it.
Well, I'm not saying that I don't think the Broncos will be that, and I'm rooting for the Broncos to be that over the Patriots for sure. But I just think if you're talking about more likely, it's probably the Patriots.
Yeah, and I think the key decision that might come down to there, I briefly mentioned with the Broncos before, the Broncos do have to face the NFC West this year, whereas the Patriots do not face them.
Also a major factor.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look. I want to say that the NFC division that they're facing this year is going to be the NFC North, and they do have a little bit of like AFC West and AFC North sprinkled in there from what I'm looking at. So that's going to be who the Patriots have to contend with, which, I mean, to be fair, we did laud the AFC West just now. So we'll see. But ladies and gents, that was the NFL's 2026 season preview from us here at the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. That was the AFC side of things. You have our analysis. Justin, we kind of talked about this last season that, it really felt like deep into the year, there were a lot of teams vying for playoff spots, a lot of teams vying for wild card. At the conferences, especially the AFC, look deep. I think it's very similar this year. I think we're going to see another relatively deep season. I think we're going to see some deep teams competing. I think it's going to be another great wild card race, at least on the AFC side. We'll talk next week. It's going to be down the NFC side as well. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. We've returned once again, and we're going to be back to at least preview the NFC next week. And it's just in the hands of fate from there. So thank you all for joining us on this week's edition of the show. We will be back next week to cover the rest of the NFL, and to give you a crash course on what to expect even more in this 2026 season. Thank you so much for joining us, you beautiful, beautiful human beings. For more fun, football, and chaos, we'll see you guys next time. Take care, and bye-bye.